started in a moment. So we're here today to talk about Ling Yuan, which is the 8th method of Yuan Gong, and it is the method for changing patterns. And I'm Marcia.
I'm Sabine.
And Sabine is going to talk just for a moment and then lead us in building the chi field for our session.
Yes. So welcome again. Building up on presentations we have had so far. The presentation yesterday on Tong Yuan, cultivating the qualities of the heart, are extremely important as a foundation for the method of Ling Yuan. And so we will refer to that. And this morning, Yuan Tse was talking about Zhu Cha. And it really occurred to me to what extent Ling Yuan really leads to the true Zhu Cha. It's a path to that clarity. And so that's what we're going to do this afternoon. And I like to build the chi field together with the heart prayer. And the reason I wanted to do that is that it really speaks to the reason we do this work. So let's do that together. If you haven't heard the heart prayer yet, you will see it's very beautiful and brings in the heart. So find a comfortable place you are and connect with your body. Relax into your body. Look straight forward. Settle your gaze in the void. Integrate and unify with the void in front of you and draw your vision back to the center of the head. And gently close your eyes. And now you are inside. Feel your body, your chi, and your heart. We spoke about the qualities of the heart yesterday. Connect with trust in your heart. And from that place of trust, open up, or allow your heart to open to yourself, to the chi field, everyone and everything in the chi field. That includes everyone live streaming with us. Connect with love. Love that connects everything and nourishes. And very naturally from that, gratitude can rise. It's effortless, like an outcome of the state. And connect with true respect and true humility. From that beautiful place, connect with everyone in the chi field and beyond, all human beings. Unify with all life forms, plants and animals and those we don't know. With the world, with the universe. From deep into your heart, wish everyone to go into their heart to find refuge and feel safe. May everyone go into their heart to find trust, openness, love, gratitude, and Gongjing. May everyone go into their hearts to see the bright light. May everyone go into their hearts to meet their true self. From a deep and very sincere place inside, wish everyone health, happiness, and growth. From deep inside, wish the world peace and harmony. Now open your heart, your arms, and connect with the love and wisdom of the universe. Hold the universe between your arms and draw all the chi back and bring the love and wisdom inside your heart. And bring your hands to the sides, and if you wish, you can open your eyes, and we're ready to start. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabine. So I was thinking about a funny little pattern that has developed since we were here last in 2019. And that's every time I cough, I'm worrying people are thinking I have COVID. And every time somebody else is coughing, it's like, oh my God. So anyway, patterns can develop really quickly like that. So it's in our nature to develop patterns. We can't help but develop patterns. And that's because we have a consciousness. And patterns are fixed ways of dealing with information. So the information of a cough, there becomes a fixed way of relating to it. And those fixed ways of relating to information can save us a lot of time. They're not always unhealthy. They're sometimes actually quite beneficial. So for example, if you have ever burned your hand on a hot pan handle, next time you probably used a hot pad to lift it off the stove. And it becomes automatic when you're cooking. You don't have to think it through every time or burn yourself every time in order to remember to get the hot pad. It's automatic. Same with getting into a bath or a shower. Like the first time you stepped into a cold or really hot shower, you learned to check the water before you get in. So these automatic responses to information can be really helpful, and they can save us a lot of time. If we had to remember to look both ways before crossing the street every single time, we might not be here. Those are automatic patterns, and they're patterns that have developed on the level of like safety, our desire to keep ourselves safe. Patterns also develop on the social level, and depending on your culture or your family, you were taught at a young age how to greet people you know or strangers. And when you did this in a way that others responded to positively, you developed a pattern about how you greet people. And you, through this positive feedback, get a sense of belonging. Like, I belong to these people. I'm accepted. I'm loved. The need for safety and for those qualities of feeling worthy and valuable and loved and accepted and belonging, those are basic human nature needs. Yuansa has put into very succinct terminology human nature needs, and that is that we seek self-interest and we avoid harm, and we seek simplicity and we avoid complexity. So there's simplicity in some of the behavioral patterns that we develop that keep us safe. There is simplicity in some of the patterns that we develop with social exchanges that give us that immediate sort of feeling of value and acceptance. And these patterns can make our lives actually quite simple in a way. I know how to act when I'm in this situation, or I know what to do when I'm in this situation. And so our human nature needs to be safe, to feel loved, to feel like we belong, can be put into these simple terms, as Yuansa has taught us. So what I've talked about are behavioral patterns, also sort of emotional patterns. I get a certain response when I do a certain thing. And those we could say are beneficial and healthy. They make us feel good. Yuansa talked about that this morning, that feeling of warmth in your heart when you do something that gets positive feedback. But patterns can slip into the unhealthy realm. And that can happen for lots of different reasons. And I saw a meme on Instagram. Yes, I doom scroll sometimes, not as much as I used to, but I do get a kick out of some of the memes and the cats and the dogs and all of that on Instagram. And there was this meme, I don't know if it's a meme, I don't know that I have the correct terminology there, but it was a woman that had a boot on one of her feet, and she was going down her stairs, and you can imagine how careful she was being, and she was holding onto the railing. And then her dog, started going down the stairs the same way. And the caption was, "I guess we're now afraid of the stairs." Well, it makes me think of if you grow up in a home with a caregiver who holds a lot of fear from experiences that they've had, from patterns that they've had. Maybe there's distrust in their heart. There's fear about the world. The child receives that information just like that dog, by watching. And somebody that holds a lot of fear transmits that information. And the child receives that, processes it, stores it, and retrieves it when they're in situations. So in that instance, the child might grow up and be very concerned about seeking safety, certainty. They may have fixed expectations. They may want to control things. They may also seek a lot of approval. There's many, many patterns that can develop when a caregiver has patterns that we've received, processed, stored. Sometimes children grow up in homes where there's abuse or neglect. When children experience those things, they draw a lot of conclusions about themselves, about others, and about the world. They may think they're bad. They may think they have to continually prove that they're good. Besides maybe being afraid of the world, these conclusions they've drawn about themselves begin to drive everything that they do as life goes on. Oop, I'm going to go back. We're not there yet. So patterns can be both healthy and beneficial. Our examples around, or my examples around the hot pad, or checking the water, or looking both ways when you cross the street. But they can also lead to a lot of problems later in life, because patterns form in children based on unsound conclusions. But they're children, and so they cannot do otherwise. They are going to develop patterns. And they take the information that they're given, and they experience what they have experienced, and they draw all sorts of conclusions. We all did it. Everybody in this room did it. It's the nature of having a consciousness. If you really think about it, it's really quite noble what our little people did when we were children. The conclusions they drew, the behaviors they created, the ideas they have, were their way of trying to meet their human nature needs. They didn't know how else to do it. And you would never sit a 10-year-old down and say to them, "Shame on you. Shame on you for those conclusions." But we do that to ourselves, don't we? I do it. I judge myself. I say things to myself I would never say to a child. And that's part of what Ling Yuan is helping us undo. It's helping us form healthy patterns based on the true reality of things. It's to counteract those conclusions that we created about ourselves, about others, and about the world that don't serve us. And the patterns that we develop cannot be the basis for healthy patterns. Self-centeredness, greediness, fixed expectations, all of those cannot be the base of healthy patterns. So Ling Yuan is all about replacing unhealthy information based on the conclusions we drew, the beliefs we created, the ideas we formed, so that they match the true reality of who we really are. And that's the beauty of Ling Yuan. So we'll talk a little bit more about patterns, but Sabine's going to go into a little more depth about how patterns work.
Yeah, thank you, Marsha. So to know ourselves, we really need to have a good look at how we function. And that means looking at the patterns. Now, I think it's pretty clear that we are functioning through patterns. And so what we're going to do now is look at how patterns form and develop. And I will focus specifically on polarized thinking because it's quite easy to see and quite extreme. But this applies to all the fundamental patterns that I'm going to share. I refer back, and actually Yuan talked this morning about self-centeredness and explained how it came to be and how it functions. So it's pretty much the same process we're going to go through now, which is so important to understand the law of patterns. And the reason it's important to understand and go through this again today is because it's really how the Ling Yuan method has been developed. It follows the law of development of patterns. So everything I will share with you now will actually be used in the Ling Yuan practice. It's kind of the process of the Ling Yuan practice itself. So the patterns are a tool. Like they're really part of what we are made of. Like there's no getting rid of them in this life. They're there. At least the way we're functioning now. They are a mechanism we have to process information, as Marsha explained very well, the best we can. But remember that from the perspective of Ren Shui, everything is qi. So information is qi, patterns are information, patterns are qi. So when we work on patterns, we work on qi and the information of qi. And this is relevant for the Ling Yuan practice because it is a method just as the other Yuan Gong methods. Even though there's a strong focus on information, very high focus on information, we are also working on qi. And so it is a method in its own right, like the other Yuan Gong methods as well, where we work on qi. And you will see, so this is to help you understand the importance of the preparation and the work on qi before we actually practice the core of the method of Ling Yuan. So we exist in an environment and we interact with everything that is coming at us. But we don't, everything coming at us is qi as well, so really visualize yourself as an open system of qi, constant exchange of information of qi. And we had the methods yesterday of opening and closing, and this is the same, like constantly the information comes out and comes in. And this is also what Marsha was talking about in very practical ways. This information is going out and coming in. It is happening all the time, and all of this is in movement all the time. So there's constant change happening as well. And in this movement, we are not just reacting at things coming at us, but we are also seeking things. We are going out. So what is this drive we have to seek out in that sea of qi? We are qi in a sea of qi. And this is our human nature drives that are pushing us to seek out. And the deep drive we have is to stay alive and to develop. All these drives are pushing us out to do that. And in order to do that, to stay alive, as a first condition so we can develop, we need to identify what is beneficial to us and what can harm us. So we need mechanisms to be able to figure that out. For example, we seek water, we seek food, we seek shelter, we seek safety. Obviously, social belonging is a very important one as well, that we need for safety, because we are social beings. So we have no choice but to interact with other human beings all the time and their patterns. So it's a feature of life and it's there to stay, that mechanism. That's the deal. This is who we are, how we are functioning. So maybe you can put the slide back on of...
Seek benefit.
Yes. It's such an important drive because this drive of seek self-interest and avoid harm is really that. And it is the drive behind all the movement we create, the things we seek, and the reactions we have to things. We also need to process a lot of information very fast, and so we have a second very fundamental pattern. I say very because it's even more fundamental than the fundamental ones. It's what is behind all the patterns. And this is to seek simplicity and avoid complexity. So sometimes we need to process information extremely fast, so we simplify things so that we can make a decision. And for example, stay alive or find what we need to find or what we are seeking. And so to do that, we have developed thousands of patterns because they are very quick to process information very quickly on this basis. Seek self-interest, avoid harm, seek simplicity, and avoid complexity. And we do that with information that we are already familiar with. We actually respond to what we recognize, and the pattern responds to it and deals with it right away because it recognizes it. So can you feel the limitation already there? The patterns really deal with information that we recognize already. They build up gradually. Like Marsha said, the child develops that and then boom, recognizes, and the pattern is there, responding to it. I read recently something really interesting. We do this with words that we read. Did you know that? When we can have a sentence written out and they can remove all the letters, but the first and the last one of every word. And it's almost as easy, it's just as easy to read the sentence. These are patterns, we fill in the blanks. We fill in the blanks with the patterns. Little pieces of information, boom, we've got it. So in a way, it's very cool that we have this efficiency. But let's look deeper at this situation. So it's a very, very ancient skill because we need it to survive. That's another important thing to remember. It is deep inside us. Like every cell can feel it. Every cell knows these patterns, the fundamental ones. Where I live close to the Rocky Mountains, and when we come back from a hike in the mountains, there's a huge billboard by the side of the road. You know, those really big ones you can see? And on it is a picture of a cougar with the head low and looking at us, like the kind of situation we didn't want to have in the mountains and hopefully didn't have that day. So it's very easy to connect to the image. And the words next to it say, hear it before you see it. It's a brilliant ad. It's for hearing aid because you cannot not look at it. Boom, you see the cougar, the danger, and you're just drawn and you want to know what it is about and you go. In one way, the ad is not so good in that I have no idea what company it is because I'm so focused and so extreme in the information I'm looking at. I've seen it 100 times. It's been there for many years. But it's the direct, complete focus on what is going on. And of course, I want to hear it before I see it. Every cell in my body responds to that situation right away. So we need to know quickly, because we need to respond to the situation, obviously, and we have a choice to fight, flight, flee, or freeze. And this is when you meet a cougar, it's pretty obvious what it means, but this can show up in many different formats through life, the same very fundamental responses to a danger. We cannot think at that moment because thinking is very cumbersome. There's no time for it, and actually it is not the moment to think. It is the moment to assess quickly, with simplicity, and to get out of harm's way. So that is really what patterns do, and so this is what we're looking at here is the pattern of polarized thinking. So it's very useful, it's very effective in keeping us alive, hopefully alive in a situation like this. And it is called polarized thinking, but in fact it is not thinking. As I said, thinking is too slow. Before a thought forms, actually a lot of patterns have already been active. A lot of information has already been processed, and boom, we react. It's more like a reflex. And this is one reason it can be so difficult to work on patterns, because we're used to solve problems with thought. But actually the thought is already a relatively superficial way of the manifestation of the patterns. The next step would be the behavior, like fight, flee, freeze. But we need to work at a deeper level, at the level of the patterns themselves. So we need to use a different mechanism than thinking to be able to work at this stage. So even though thoughts and behaviors are quite relatively superficial compared to the pattern activity, it's often what we work with because it is much easier to see. And so it's like lifting a line, and then from a behavior we can start going back and start working backwards to find out what the patterns are behind. You can see, for example, how a simple behavior such as a coffee addiction, something simple and not that extreme, how it can be difficult to change. And that's because we haven't gone to the source of that behavior yet. We need to go back to the thought and to the patterns behind it. Once we get there, it will come. The change will come. But it's useful to observe the addiction to the caffeine, if it's a problem. If it's not, then... So patterns cause behaviors, reactions, and specific patterns will have their own way of manifesting. So today we're talking about focusing more on polarized thinking, and Yuan-Tse talked about self-centeredness this morning. You can actually see how self-centeredness supports the behavior, the pattern of polarized thinking as I speak. They're actually working together quite nicely. My understanding is that self-centeredness is actually behind every pattern. So you can start looking at that. So this form of responding is already there at a very, very young age. So a very young child would say, I'm hungry, and so my whole world falls apart. Like there's nothing good about this day until I get food in my system. This is already polarized thinking, manifesting at a very young age. And children until the early 20s tend to see things quite a lot in black and white. And then as we mature, we become more sophisticated, we have more patterns, more nuances. And so the pattern of polarized thinking will still be there, but will be more complex, more complicated, more bearable for others and for ourselves. But it is actually still manifesting. It is still there. So these patterns, and maybe to go back to what Masha said about, don't bash yourself for it, they are inherited, like genetically. Culturally, we receive them. It's part of being human. And so they're there, but they will evolve in our own way, and we will add a lot to it. So we're really participants. We'll in it very quickly. We'll become participants. So here are more examples of the more sophisticated forms. And many patterns are involved in these examples, but just look at the polarized thinking here. I can't do this properly, therefore I won't do it at all. Has anyone ever done that? And so this is like there's nothing in between. There's no process, there's no growth, there's no movement. This is polarized thinking. I'm a victim means I'm 100% victim. That is polarized thinking also. Making it simple, manageable, safe. My belief system is right, another person is wrong. So this polarized thinking as well, and it doesn't mean that I am not right, that there's nothing right in my system, but what is my basis for saying that or believing that? What has been my inquiry to come to this conclusion? Have I even done some inquiry? Waiting for the result of a medical test, for example, can also be a big one for many people. And so it goes one way, positive test or negative test. The test is negative, I'm good, I'm free to go. Positive test, it's all bad. Like nothing good can come out of it. This is also polarized thinking with severe consequences. Because now I am in the pattern of the cougar showing up. All hands on deck to protect myself, and all the tension, can you feel? Try to see yourself facing a cougar on a hike, like you don't want to see them. They hide themselves, normally they don't show up. When they do show up, it's not good news. Every cell is starting to talk. It's in our genes, it's there, and this is not good for healing. So the work we need to do is really get more distance from this and have more clarity and see, so what is going on here? And I want to heal. So what will I do so I can heal? So we have a choice there that can come with more clarity and more awareness of what we're actually doing. If we just go with the pattern, because it's easy, it can even feel right, even feel comfortable. It can actually take us further away from what we want to achieve. So the clarity, the Juecha Yuanta was talking about, can really help us with that. So here we are talking about fundamental ones, and polarized thinking as an example, self-centeredness this morning as another example. And they are fundamental because they are springboards for other patterns to form. So it's good to see them, because the deeper we go in pattern work, the more we can destabilize the foundation of the patterns, the whole edifice we have built since early childhood. And so it's very useful to look at those fundamental patterns and become very familiar with each one of them. Polarized thinking is indeed a clear example on how a pattern can be useful and keep us safe and alive. It can also help us make decisions in a complex world. Like we cannot mull forever over a decision we have to make, and yet the information available in the totality is huge. So Yuan-Tse has quite a cute example about that one. We meet a person who we think is going to be the perfect partner for life. So what we do, polarized thinking can be very useful. We just go for it and do our very best to win that person's heart. No mulling over the decision. And the chances of that working are much better. So that can be one situation where polarized thinking can be justified and lead to good outcomes. So other patterns will have their own reasons to exist, like I talked about polarized thinking with the survival, which is very obvious. Other patterns will find their own reasons. But if we dig deep enough, and that's my experience, I don't think it's in the book, it often comes down to a threat or a perceived threat to something we cherish. When we go deep enough, it often comes down to a threat or a perceived threat to something we cherish. And now I've opened a can of worms. What do we cherish? Life, obviously. Like, it's not bad. We cherish very good things. Love. I mean, it can be anything. But it's the way we go about it that's the problem, how we understand things. So while polarized thinking can be a great skill, it usually leads to a lot of problems. Because of the way we go about it, because of the way we understand the situation and the world. We can ask ourselves, so when we think in that way, in a very extreme way, what does the pattern of polarized thinking place its judgment on? And what does any pattern place its judgment on? Think about that. The answer is so simple. That's why I'm asking you to think. You'll be surprised. It bases it on our current knowledge. What else could it be? We can only judge based on what we know. What else could it be? So where does that knowledge come from? And Yuan-Tse touched that already this morning. So I will go briefly over this. Our social and cultural environment influences us. I told you we are an open system in an environment with constant exchange of qi. You know, I am Belgian. I don't look French. That's my patterns are different from the French patterns. I don't look Californian, and so on. So it's just everywhere in the way we hold ourselves, in our view of the world and everything. So I don't need to go more in that, but it can lead to hardship. Like I read that there will be elections in 50 countries this year, and that 2 billion people will be eligible to vote. So imagine the pattern of polarized thinking in that mixture, in that setup. It can create a lot of tensions, because that pattern separates and divides. Because I know what is right based on what I know. So really what is right is what I identify with. And this is what we're going to face this year in the world. A lot of that. I know what is right. What is right is what I identify with. Now the need for safety is real, like with all the work we do. It is a very basic human nature need. So we need to fulfill it, but it's the way we go about it, because it's based on the knowledge of what we know so far, that can take us further and further away from the goal we seek, and the goal that we need to reach. So it's a very sad story, really. And so we really need to help each other, even people with patterns that are very difficult to live with. You feel the compassion that that's where they're at, that's where we're at. When we start to see it in ourselves, it's really a lot easier to understand the situation of all of humanity. So social, cultural environment, the family, of course, has the strongest influence. Imagine from early babyhood on, it's very strong. Yuan-Tse has said that couples can start to look alike physically as they age. So strong is the influence of we are an open system. You have probably seen couples like that. So imagine the influence on you, your family had on you as a baby. It's huge. So we really need to dig deep and also accept that this is the situation for ourselves and for our children. And the education system as well, and I just mentioned one, you're right, you're wrong, and all this, you all gone through that education system. But even science, like the physical and non-physical world are separate, that's polarized thinking. It's really at the foundation of science currently. And science plays a big role in society, so that's quite impressive that we're at that stage. So these are some of the main influences, and Yuan talked about it this morning, but I don't think there's a limit to the list. And all these influences form the basis from which we understand life. We call that the reference system. That's the one we have now. Now, we could blame everything, society, the family, and so on, for everything that happens to us, but that would be polarized thinking as well. The biggest factor influencing our patterns is the personal factor. That's the strongest influence of all. And Yuan talked about the seed we're born with this morning. And that will shape how we respond to the environment we're in. And different siblings may not respond the same way to the same environment. Or people in the same country may not, or people in the same horrific situation, or in the same beautiful situation will have different responses. So that's the personal factor. So we need to look at ourselves when we do this work. I'm looking at the time, Marsha. How much time do I have for this?
I think you're good.
I have another 5 minutes?
Couple minutes, 5 minutes, yeah.
Okay. So the next thing we want to do once we become aware of this, and I talk about it because it is a very important, it's the whole beginning of the Lingyuan practice, really developing an awareness of the situation we're in, the predicament we're in, the things as they are, see things as they are, and face them. But then what can we do about it? And that's like the second part of Lingyuan, and we're going to go into the method later. It should be clear by now that we cannot do this through thinking. We have probably done a lot of thinking in our lives. And the thinking came from patterns, and it just creates more patterns. We need another tool. Like, it's endless. Maybe we can have some improvement, but problems keep coming. Maybe the old ones are quieter, but new ones keep coming up. So we need a much deeper work. And so this will be done in a special state. We need to get there. And there's 3 reasons for that. Because of the depth of the patterns, we want to go before the thought. We want to work at that level. Eventually, we also use the thought, but we want to work before the thought. Also because the patterns are part of human nature to seek benefit and avoid harm, and seek simplicity, avoid complexity, and that is so deep in our nature that we need to work at a deep level. We cannot do this through thinking, because when we think we're in the patterns and we apply this in a way that causes more harm than good. So because we're dealing with our human nature, we really need to go in a special state to go at that deep, deep level. And we lack the clarity. And just with the thinking, once he talked about this morning, we need to acquire clarity through a different way. For example, the heart needs to be involved. And then once we open the heart, we can involve our true self and start to have more clarity, and realization and wisdom gradually can come in. So we need to bring other tools in it. The ordinary tools just are not going to do it. So when we have the tools to create that, we need to bring in the heart qualities in the practice. So you need to practice Tong Yuan before you really understand Ling Yuan, go into a really Ling Yuan practice, and to make some progress in Tong Yuan. And that means not just practicing the method, but really applying it day to day in the conflicts we face, moment to moment, every little conflict, and make some progress there so that we are able to manifest those qualities a little bit more. And so that's one. And the second one is change the reference system. And so everything we learn and all the theories in the Ren Shui system help us build a new reference system. The Yuan Gong methods help us build a new reference system. Find out that we are Qi, that we are an open system, that we exchange information. All those things are part of changing the reference system. Finding out who we are, Jing, Qi, Shen, everything, every part of the Ren Shui system is helping us change our reference system. It's a new reference system. And we use those two, the heart and the new reference system. It's both a process to change it as a basis to transform the patterns in the Ling Yuan method. I'll tell you a story that happened here, just to let you know how it is incremental, because there are people here who have never practiced, and so we'll explain the method so that you can practice it in a meaningful way tonight. That's why I'm giving this detail. It will already be meaningful for you. You will already start building up your practice. I was here at the retreat and I was wondering, how can we be in Fresno and we cannot have ripe fruit? It's always, everybody's laughing, it's always so hard. So one day, it was a few years ago, we were here, I took a peach that was hard and I took it to my room and decided to give it a chance to develop and flourish and be itself, what its nature has meant it to be. And so I wanted to give it time to ripen. And what happened over 3-4 days, it remained hard. It just wouldn't soften, but the edge became like a little bit soft, a bit like my skin is aging, like a bit softer. It didn't feel quite right. And then I decided, well, it's not getting better, so I'll eat it. I opened it, and it was all brown inside and really like that. And what I felt in that moment was so much compassion for the peach that didn't get the right conditions, the right chance. And I thought, and we didn't get to meet and connect and, enjoy that way. So it didn't happen. So that's the first part of the story. The second part, I was eating porridge and putting some raisins in it. And at one moment, I had a bite, and it was such a deep shock. One of the raisins had mold. And you see the reaction. You see how strong a mold can be. Like it's a deep survival instinct. Like everything kicks in, and oh my God, I need to spit that out. And that moment of shock, in that moment, information came down and it said, it doesn't have to be perfect to be appreciated. Mm-hmm. And I was sure that information came because of the peach and my compassion I had with the peach. My heart was open already. So even though I had the shock, the heart was open to receive that information. And I was surprised. I knew it was important information, but it's only much later, as I carried this through my life, that I realized how very important that information was. Something does not have to be perfect to be appreciated. It was actually a deep teaching that happened. So when you practice Ling Yuan, information comes in unexpected ways and forms. Teachers are everywhere. That's the story for you. Two minutes? Yeah. Okay, no, we see. Leave it there.
No. Finish.
I'll conclude because we have other very important things that we want to share so that you can have a good practice tonight. So the point I want to make here, talking about the patterns and polarized thinking, is that we can develop an understanding of the patterns. Of one pattern at a time, we can get to know it. And this is a very important step in transforming it. So just look at it, be curious, learn about it, and get to know it and face it. We'll do that during the Ling Yuan practice. Yeah.
One of my favorite things in the world is Sabine's stories. And I'm going to tell one later, but she doesn't really remember, but it really struck me. And it's about a crab apple, but we'll save that.
Fruit.
So Yuansa has identified, 10 fundamental patterns and 20 additional patterns. I'll come back to the 10 fundamental patterns in a moment, but I want to let you know that in your portals, your online portals, you have 2 versions of both the 10 fundamental patterns and the 20 additional patterns. There's a short version of each, which is kind of nice because there's little icons and then the name of the pattern, and I actually have those in my journal that I do my pattern work in. And then there's a longer version, and the longer versions goes into why these patterns manifest, and it talks a little bit about some of the factors that Sabine went over and that Yuansa also talked about today. So Sabine already mentioned the reason these are fundamental patterns. They form the root of many patterns. So it's really important to understand these 10 fundamental patterns, not just by studying them, although that's a huge component. That's how we can begin to change the unhealthy reference system that we have developed based on really our ignorance as children. Again, Yuansa talked about that word can be a little inflammatory, but we didn't know better. We did the best we could. But those conclusions and our beliefs about ourselves, our thoughts, our body sensations, how we've embodied the patterns, it's not based on the true reality. It is truly based on ignorance. So studying the patterns is one way to give your consciousness different information. It's really important. The second thing is to look and observe how these show up. So I had something happen this morning. I got all involved in my own thinking about it, and I felt like Yuansa was talking to me. Well, that is self-centered. But it was a pattern around self-centeredness, like my feelings mattered the most in the situation. And so I was able to work through that quickly, I think, partly because I'm in the chi field, but also partly because Yuansa was talking about it. So I was receiving information that then I could take and go, oh, that really showed up for me in this way. And then it was easier to change it. So these are fundamental because they form the basis for many other patterns. And this is a quote from Yuansa from the Level 5 teacher training, where he taught the 8th method, along with a lot of other stuff. What do we want to achieve when we strive to make real change to life? We want to make changes to all the unhealthy activities of the consciousness. The most effective way to change the unhealthy behavior of the consciousness is to change the unhealthy patterns of the consciousness. A good place to start is changing the fundamental patterns. We can say that changing the fundamental patterns is a shortcut. That's what Lingyuan is for. We get to know the manifestations of the fundamental patterns in our lives and to change them. Now, if you don't know the practice of Lingyuan yet, trust that Sabine is going to explain the practice in more depth. So we're talking a lot about it, but we haven't, if you're new to this, we haven't told you what it exactly is. That is coming. So Sabine gave you an example of polarized thinking. And for some reason, my accent from when I was a child has been coming out lately. I don't know if anybody noticed that. Pattern, right? It's a pattern. There's something that's bringing it up. So the patterns form for the same reasons, although the manifestations can be different. And as Sabine mentioned, they can be different based on your culture, your education, your personal factors, your family life. So that's the internal work. That's the internal observation and exploration that you do around any of the patterns that you're working on. talk a little bit about how a pattern can manifest. We'll talk a little bit about stubbornness. So we talked about how patterns can be healthy, beneficial to life, and then how they can be not so healthy. So one would think that helping others is a good quality, right? Beneficial, good for everybody. Yeah, nice, healthy pattern. But not when something like stubbornness is at the base. If stubbornness is at the base, you're helping people based on what you think is right. And you can be quite stubborn about that and fixed. You might get very contrary when people don't exactly follow what you think they should be doing. But you're trying to help them, right? That's all you're trying to do. There's other patterns that can show up. Seeking approval is one of the 20 fundamental patterns. So no matter how many compliments you get, no matter how much positive feedback you get, it may never be enough because there's a void that is there that was never filled. And Sabine touched on that a little bit. Patterns are like heat-seeking missiles. They sift and sort through information and delete everything that does not align with how they see the world. So no matter how much positive feedback you might get, the pattern itself will delete and sort that away, and you might focus on the one negative thing that happened or was said. You might be envious and jealous and really competitive. It's really hard to share the limelight when within yourself you don't really believe that you're capable enough or good enough. The reason I'm bringing this up is that patterns aren't a standalone event. They form a complex, mutually influencing web. One can lead to the other, can lead to the other, to lead to the other, until they're like a cluster. And I have a term, cluster something, that came to mind right now, but it kind of is like that, right? So, there's some good news in all of this. When you work on one of the fundamental patterns, you are weakening the other patterns that are part of that cluster of patterns. You're systematically and intentionally chipping away at the old information by adding new information. And that will fundamentally begin to shift your reference system. So we're continually dealing with this web of patterns. And we can ask ourselves, how do we know where to start? And I think one of the easiest ways, and you once talked about this, maybe in the original training, you start where you have the most problems in your life. Where do you feel the most dis-ease? Where do the problems show up? I'm highly competitive. I'm better at it. It's hard to play a board game with me. So I know where a lot of my patterns are. And so I knew to begin to really work on that. But problems were showing up in my life around working with other people. So that was like a big old red, work on that. So that's kind of the easy way to do it. Where do you have problems in your life? Where is most of the friction between you and other people? Where do you get the most disturbed? And then you study and you look at the patterns and you'll get more and more information about how they manifest. Patterns can kind of, again, have these blinders. And so seeking information within the materials that Yuansa provides in other classes that are offered can help you see yourself more clearly. It'll make visible what needs to change in ways that might be a little surprising. The information that I'm talking about that you'll find by self-observing, looking at yourself, looking at how your life is manifesting, where the problems are in your life, and then also the information from Yuansa, that material provides the content for Ling Yuan practice. And again, we'll get to explaining what Ling Yuan practice is. But I want to talk a little bit about what you are doing when you're doing Ling Yuan, because you're doing something quite different, and Sabine touched on that. When you do Ling Yuan, you enter into a very special state. Yuansa talked about Jing Shen today. The Shen, the true self, the heart consciousness, Shin, and then the consciousness, Yi. And those three components form Jing Shen. We want to bypass, in a way, and that may not be quite the right word. We had a great discussion about that. But it's a pattern in me to call it that. We want to move beyond the consciousness. We don't want to use the consciousness to change patterns. As Yuansa says, that's inviting the thief to protect the bank. Because your reference system, which is finely tuned to sift and sort information and find what proves that pattern's point of view, in simple terms, anything else is going to get sorted out. So you want to not use the consciousness fully, use the consciousness only to change patterns. Now, maybe you've read the book, Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. Using the consciousness can have some effect on our life. I mean, my life improved when I started sort of upgrading the way I did things or, changed myself. But the fundamental patterns were still there. They just showed up differently. So for example, someone who stops drinking may become addicted to sweets. It's kind of a common occurrence. They've just replaced one pattern with maybe a less unhealthy pattern, maybe less impact on their lives than alcohol. But the root, the reasons for that addiction are still there. So using the consciousness to change our life can have some beneficial effect. But Ling Yuan is intended to go deeper than that and use the special state where the true self, the Shen, and the heart are having a conversation. So the answers you get are coming from a very deep place within you. So I'll tell a story about getting to the root of things. And if you were in Mexico, you heard this story, but I love this story, so I'm telling it again. There was a village at the bend of a river. And one day the children were down at the water playing, and a dead body floated down and got tangled up in the rocks. And the children ran and got the elders, and the elders came and they looked at the body. Yes, the person had died. And they buried this person with great respect, which was their custom. A couple weeks went by. 2 more bodies came down the river. And then a few more weeks, a couple more came down. And they had to make all these arrangements that the children couldn't be at the river anymore and that you could only go and get water at certain times. And all these systems were developed to keep everybody in the village safe. And year after year, more and more bodies came down the river. And then their whole village life was kind of organized around these events. And in all the years, and with all the systems they developed to deal with these bodies, nobody ever went upstream to see what was going on. That's what Lingyuan is for. It's for going upriver. It's for getting at the root. Because if you get at the root, you will change your life in fundamental ways. Oh, I thought it was great when Nuanza talked today, too, about patterns exist on the level of both the brain and with chi and information. And it just made this example that I was going to share today make so much more sense. Because you're not just dealing with neuroplasticity or the brain. You're dealing with the underlying chi and information of patterns when you're doing Lingyuan. So you are fundamentally really changing yourself at a very, very, very deep level. Oh, I have another quote. So this is an excerpt from the Lingyuan handout that you'll find in your portals. Does everybody, well, I shouldn't ask a question and then I'm not going to let anybody answer it, so I'm not going to do that. The central idea of Lingyuan is that to realize real change in life, it is necessary to transform unhealthy activities of the consciousness and behavior. To do this, it is necessary to change their director, the patterns of consciousness. In Lingyuan, this is done by direct and deep communication between Xinling, your heart consciousness, your Xin, and Shen, your true self. And it's done in a very special state. And Sabine will talk about the preparation for Lingyuan. And then another quote from New Beginnings. You can make many changes in your life, but if they do not have any effect on correcting what does not go with the law of life, there will be no fundamental change, and life will continue to follow the destined course. So it really is through Lingyuan, working on the patterns, and Tongyuan, working on the heart, because we have patterns on the level of the heart as well, that you can change the fundamental trajectory of your life. And Sabine is now going to explain the method.
Yes, the method. It may feel late, but the method would not have much meaning if for people who are new to the system. And I say new, I don't say beginners, because I never know what level of life cultivation people are at, but people who have never not heard much about the Ren Shui system, we felt that this whole introduction was important, so that what I am going to explain to you now, which is relatively simple, has more meaning to you. So some important points about Lingyuan. The literal translation for Lingyuan is the method for reaching the original face. He also said, what things are. So it's always back to this clarity, seeing things for what they are, as they are, without the filters, the deformation, the incompleteness, and so on, all the drama, just seeing. And Ling actually also means clarity. So, and we do this method through dialogue between Xin and Shen. When we say Shen, we mean Shen Yi is present, the whole of Jing Shen is present. Xin, Shen, E. So Shin, the heart, Shen, the true self, and E, the consciousness. But through unification of Jing Shen, the true self can start manifest more, or in more obvious way taking the lead in tiny moments. So there is thinking involved in the method. Like we need to use our brain as well, just for reading the information to know what we're working with. There's a dialogue, so we're using our brain to understand. It's in English. We require a brain to understand that. But it's not through thinking that the change occurs. So be clear on this distinction. Ling Yuan is also a systematic approach. So there's always, like in everything Yuan Tse does, there's an organization to it, there's an order. And the first step is to understand the pattern. And we've talked a lot about that, and Yuan Tse talked about self-centeredness this morning. The second step is to identify the patterns that need change. And this is a very personal work to do, for example, in relation to all our backgrounds, family background, for example, life experience. So what do we need to change? The conflicts we're in. The third step is to face them, to face what needs change. And Yuan Tse has told us this is the step where most of us get stuck, facing it. And then the fourth step is to transform them. And as for all the Yuan Gong practices, there is an opening. There's an opening or preparation. There's a main practice, and then there's an ending. And in addition, Ling Yuan has a prerequisite. So let me first talk about the prerequisite for Ling Yuan. So the first one is to be familiar with the 10 fundamental patterns. And Marsha just talked about them. And then there's 20 more. They're actually easier to see. They're a little bit less fundamental. And I really enjoyed reading those because I could see them much more easily. When I started reading the first 10 many years ago, I thought, yeah, maybe that one and maybe a little bit of that one. But now they're all glaring at me, so it took a while. But the 20 are quite easy to see for me anyways. You also need to build your own database. And for that, there's another technique that is available, and I don't have time to teach it, but really we're just teaching the base, the starting of the Ling Yuan method, but you really want to continue to develop your understanding with a teacher, with a qualified teacher. But so the supplementary technique is really interesting. It's called one technique, one attitude. So the one technique, yes, refers to, he says, backtracking and restoring the whole story. Let's say you're in an argument with someone. I'm right, you're wrong, so whatever happens. As soon as possible after the event, and you recognize the event, that there was a disturbance or a conflict, you even write it down, do everything, you backtrack to what happened, what was said, even you go before the event and before. You all know the fight between two kids that happened, but really the fight happened 2 weeks ago. And you were not there to see it, and now there's a big argument where it's there. So you backtrack the whole story, and you restore the whole story. Means you play the devil's advocate, like even put yourself in the other person's shoes, and see their point of view, how they would criticize you, and look at that, like restore the total story. You know the story, often, intimate relationships where there's an argument or the relationship starts to fall apart and they start to complain to other people. It's he says, she says, and you don't want to be involved because you know you never get the total story unless you speak to the two people. So you do that for yourself. And then the one attitude is really to be honest, authentic, to want to seek the truth. So what is your attitude? Do you really want to know the truth? Or do you want to be right? Or do you want to be safe? Or do you want to help you? Or do you want to help the whole situation, the totality? So this is the attitude. Very important to have both, because if you don't have the right attitude, probably the restoring the total story is going to be incomplete or skewed. And you need the total, more and more, as much information as you can to look objectively at the situation with honesty. So it's an excellent technique. And so you can build up your own database and your own stories. And then you can bring that information into the Ling Yuan practice. So you can do Ling Yuan practice with what you found out and seek, go deeper to go down to the patterns that were involved in your conflict, what you were working on. So that's the database. And another prerequisite is to choose a good space for a still Qigong practice. Especially when you start, it's a lot easier to do when you have the space to do it. So look for that, and people with busy households, that can be a big step in itself to find that space, or busy lives. So that's the prerequisite. And now the preparation for the practice. And all this is in a recording, so don't worry if you've never practiced it before, you will just follow the guidance. But I'll still talk about it. So you will be sitting in a posture of your choosing, a comfortable posture where your qi can flow well. Remember, we are working on qi, so you want your qi to flow well. You won't say recommend sitting. I know some people want to lie down, it's okay if that's what you need. It's just if you can sit, do it sitting. Standing, and the practice will evolve. I'm just talking about the basic format here to get you started, but all this will be very different after a while for yourself. The second step is the 6 verses that you know already from other practices, and this is to unify Jing, Qi, and Shen. So we already start the unification, and it's important. If we don't do that, it's not Ling Yuan. So I read them here briefly because they're interesting too for the method. You're familiar with them. When we say awareness inside the body, feel the emptiness and spaciousness within. So you are connecting with yourself. You go inward. And it's a closing. And then expand this awareness out, becoming one with the universe. There's an opening. We had a beautiful presentation about closing and opening, the natural movement of qi. We're already doing it with the 6 verses. They're a very important part of the practice. And then you draw the awareness back, you're closing it again, to the body calm and peaceful. And then we open again to the universe, and this time engaging the heart qualities with reverence and utmost Gongjing. So all the elements are there already in the 6 verses, the elements we need for the practice. Let the bright universe nurture the heart with compassion and love. It's closing again and you're taking it all in. You are open to that. Feel relaxed, free and joyful, qi, flowing harmoniously and smoothly. So really the preparation of Ling Yuan is already full out there with a beautiful reading of the verses. But then there's a second set of verses that comes in. There's first some Dantian breathing, so more opening and closing and strengthening the state we just built. And in the recording, that's there for 1 or 2 minutes, just some Dantian breathing. And then we go to the Kaishin verse, which are an integral part of the preparation for in the Tong Yuan practice. So the method for opening the heart. So I will read them to you, because they're also an integral part of the Ling Yuan practice. Like everything builds up to that. Heaven, earth, and human are all teachers with infinite wisdom. So this is already a huge opening to relate to everything this way. And this line alone, this verse alone, can already be a practice in itself in everyday life. So heaven, earth, and human are all teachers with infinite wisdom. We're already at a whole different level from the typical conflict that we're in. I open my Shinmen. My Shinmen is the door of my heart. Shin, heart, and men is the door, Shinmen. So I open the door of my heart to trust and love them unconditionally. We talked about these qualities yesterday. So Tong Yuan is coming into this practice. With gratitude in my heart, I receive the bright light of their love and wisdom and unify with them. The gratitude is there. And a heart with gratitude, they talked yesterday about gratitude. And one line that's very striking with gratitude is about, I'm grateful for what I have and for what I don't have. Like there's no condition, it is a state of gratitude. It's a very special state. And when we go in that state with these verses, we really facilitate the connection between the heart and the true self. So this is how we build this connection. So it starts long before we actually sit down to do the Ling Yuan practice, but we strengthen it as we prepare for the Ling Yuan practice. There are 3 more verses. My Shen, Yi, and Shin, so my true self, my consciousness, and my heart, are fully aligned with the light of Tao. Here we have the unification. All unified, which is a condition for this dialogue between the heart and the true self. With Gongjing, realization and wisdom are arising. So Gongjing, the composite quality of the heart qualities, is present, starting to manifest, and with it comes the realization and wisdom we need to see and to transform and to truly change our life. I am one with the light of the wisdom of the universe. One day I will understand that one. So those are the 6 Caixin verses. So all these verses are part of the preparation. And now it says in the recording, you are ready to start the main part of the practice. And before I talk about the main part of the practice, I said like any other practice, there is an ending. So at the ending, we tap Qi down the legs, we nourish Qi quite at lower dantian, and we can do head and face, just like as for any other practice. But let's talk about the main part of the practice now. And how much time do I have?
Why don't you go
The time I
to
need, right?
about 10 after, quarter
Okay.
after, and we'll skip some stuff.
Yeah, okay. So in the practice, there are the basic practice, and it's the one you want to learn and first develop so that you understand the principles of the method. And after that, the method can evolve to meet your own needs and be more efficient for yourself. Because we have all different web of patterns and a different reference system. So we need to work in a creative way. But today I'm teaching you the basic format, which is the starting point. Very useful. So 8 modules. And they form the routine of the practice at the basic level. And they're just basic activities or focuses that we move through in the practice. And they're all guided in the recording. In the recording, each one of these modules is a question asked by the heart to the true self. So the heart is asking a question to the true self. The first one, the heart asks, can you recognize the pattern? And so this can be simple. So tonight you will practice, it will be on self-centeredness, and Yuan-Tze has talked about self-centeredness. And when it asks you recognize, it's not an intellectual recognition. It's the heart asking the true self. It's to really another level of seeing. I don't know how to explain it, but it can just start with recognizing what we have understood intellectually. But when we see how it applies to us, it's another level of seeing. I always tell people, like we all know we're going to die, like there's no question about it. We know, we're quite confident that this is going to happen. And yet the day we find out that we're going to die, it's a shock. So what is the gap there? So this is the gap I'm talking about, between seeing and seeing. So the second question is, how does it manifest? Or can you identify the manifestations? And this is just seeing how this pattern manifests in your own life, seeing things as they are. And it is very good here when we answer, how does it manifest? I talked about polarized thinking, and we'll do a short exercise. Will we have time for it, or we'll skip it? We'll see. So polarized thinking, then think about how does it manifest. Maybe you did meet a cougar one day. Maybe you did think you were 100% right one day. Who knows? So look at a specific situation where that happened and bring it in, but be specific. And I could explain why, but I'll just say because it works so much better. It's more honest, I think, to be specific. Like we can't pretend as much. At least that's my situation. It's clearer. So we look for the manifestations, and often when we go into the Lingyuan practice, it's because something happened. And then we already have the manifestation ready. And we already recognize that this is the pattern behind, and that's what we want to work on. So that's quite the way to enter into the practice. So the next question, the next module. Shin asked, so the heart asks the true self, what are the causes of the formation of the pattern? And this is everything we talked about again. And so we really follow the law of the pattern with these questions. We really look at what they are and how they come into existence here. That's the law of the pattern. So in the case of polarized thinking, well, survivor, like we had it when we were one cell. And it's there, and it's inherited, and it's in the family, and it may have been expanded, and so on. So it's all those causes that we have inherited or soaked in through the environment we were in. The next question is, can you identify the reasons for its existence? And here what is meant by the question is, what is your justification today for this pattern to exist? Why are you using this pattern today? Why were you using this pattern? What is your justification for using the pattern in this particular conflict? Yeah, we know you have it because of cougars, but why are you using it right here? Your justification. So this is very personal information as well. And this already brings so much clarity to have to answer that question and look at it. The next question is, can you identify negative effects? So for example, you have justified it, and because you needed it, like you needed it to feel safe. Because of this and this and this, whatever, the whole story is there. But now you're asked to look at the negative impact. And often that can lead to, well, do I like the justifications as much? Maybe not so much. Like there's an opening that happens because we have to look into this sequence. So can you identify the negative effects of this pattern in your life, in this situation, and the way you justify it and use it? And the next question that the heart will ask to your true self is to determine the intention. This is like the heart of the practice. What are you going to do about it? Now that you've seen the whole story about the pattern, what it is, how it manifests, how it came to be, how you justify it, what the consequences are, what are you going to do about it? That's really, everything is leading up to that. And this is why it is so useful to learn these modules and go down, because it kind of serves it on a platter sometimes. When the clarity is clear, you say, bah, yeah, no way, I want this. It can be so clear. And sometimes, I still kind of like it, makes me feel safe, and that's okay. the key is to be very honest about it at this stage, like absolutely honest, because it's your heart talking, asking Shen, like there's no pretending, there's no should be like this, should be like that. Really, do I say, hell no, gone with it, or do I say, oh, I think I still need this because of this or that? It's okay. So what you can do is find a replacement pattern. What can you do at this stage to make it a bit better, to soften, to protect yourself, take care of the whole or whatever? So be honest, because you are at the heart of the matter, and it's honesty that will allow you to have the stepping stone to keep moving forward. If you pretend you accept it, you're nowhere. So that question is very, very important at this stage of the practice. And then, so it will ask you, how will you, can you find a replacement pattern? And so you will find something that really is your own creation. It comes from within you. It comes from your own clarity in that moment. Something that is actually easier to accept. Because the next step will be the true self asking your heart, can you affirm and accept this change? And this is magical. So you have created your own answer, your own solution, your own words. It may not be words, it may be an image, it may be a shift in state. It's coming from within you. And now Shen asks your heart, affirm it and you accept this. And again, be very honest. You can go at the end of the practice, and yes, it is, and it's quite amazing. Like the space it can create, just a small shift with a small pattern or a big pattern, but a small shift can create so much space and freedom. But it can also be, I still have an attachment to this for some reason. It means there's more work to do. So you bring it back to another Ling Yuan practice and just keep working, and this is normal. This is the process. Like me with the fruit. I don't think I would have had that information with the molded raisin, which, by the way, I ate and enjoyed. Like, if I hadn't had the whole process with the peach before that, and who knows what happened before that, and the change in reference system. The reason I found compassion for a peach, anybody would have talked to me about this years ago, I wouldn't have known what they were talking about. So Ling Yuan is this process. So this honesty, it's a true dialogue between your heart and your Shen. So it is essential to know these modules very well. I say by heart or really close wording. Because that way you can understand the process. You can start to understand the law of the patterns. And once that becomes familiar, you will see that the practice will evolve naturally, and you let that be. It is called a guided practice, as opposed to how are the other ones called? I forgot. But this is called, it's just guided, you follow the principles. We give you the principles and you follow them. But to be able to follow the principles, you need to know them. So you need to first practice with those modules and those questions, and experience for yourself the little bit I was able to share today. You may have more experiences during the retreat, and you may seek another teacher after the retreat to go deeper into this and other people. I really loved those questions from the start. For me, they had a very logical follow-up, and one question helped me develop the next. Like they were really guiding me. There's such a flow to them. It's amazing. Otherwise, it's daunting to come to the point to a conversation like that, and then to a true shift, deep shift in information. But with these questions, we're really held by the hand and the recording, and we can go. The recording has a specific timing, which is quite short, because that's the reality of life. But you need to practice this on your own, and you need to give as much time between questions as you need. And maybe one day you'll just answer 2 questions. And that will be your preparation for the next day, the next time you do the Ling Yuan practice, and then you'll be able to move on to the next questions. So you need to take the time that you need. it is, and often like there's not much happening in the Ling Yuan practice. Still do it, because Marsha will tell the story about the crab apple. Do you want to tell it now or later? But still, it will help you to stay connected to the practice, and actually there is an evolution happening. So don't start to bring in patterns when you don't get a clear answer from your Shen. It's rare, and you never know how it comes.
I will say one thing, though. It's been a while, but it's been fairly recent in my Ling Yuan practice that what I noticed was during the preparation, my mind would wander to situations or feelings or body sensations. And I always was like, oh, here I go again, my mind's wandering. I learned probably 2 years ago to pay attention to those, because I think my Shen was already giving me information about the pattern I was going to work on. So things will come that you might think aren't in the right question or aren't, maybe they're during the preparation. If you can feel that you're in that good state, pay attention, because it could be information that's coming from your Shen.
Yeah, that's a good one. And also, for me, the practice evolved naturally. I would see that I was answering the questions in a different order, and it made sense for the situation and the patterns I was working on, or that 2 questions would be answered together, and so on. So, or you may already skip one and already be to a replacement pattern. So that will come naturally. So start with that and allow changes to come in, because the practice has to become aims at giving you autonomy. This is a practice of autonomy. Those are qualities of the heart and Shen that you once talked about. So they have to come out in this practice. So you have to give space for them. Fixed expectations will not allow that. So this autonomy and creativity will manifest and needs to manifest for Ling Yuan to be effective. So that's how the practice will evolve, and has to evolve as well. So, and the content, we talked about the content for the practice. It's all the prerequisites that we talked about, but there are some more pieces besides everything you learn and observe in your everyday life, and using these techniques of restoring the story and looking at them with an authenticity and a desire to seek the truth. So all this comes into your Ling Yuan, the 10 plus 20 patterns come in. But also, as you practice Ling Yuan, you will be creating your own database. So the method creates its database from that. It starts rolling on its own. And so remember that the information that comes from your own Jingsheng is the most important one and the most powerful one. Okay, the rest are tools to get started. But really you need to rely on the information coming from inward, so don't seek externally. We need to seek externally, we need to use the brain, we need to read and learn. But the real stuff comes from within. And a lot through the Ling Yuan practice. Yes. Should I stop here? I can talk about a little bit how to improve the dialogue between Xin and Shen. Or do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. No, I had a couple.
You can move on then.
You sure? We should start our practice around 3:15, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have so many good things to tell you. We have to choose.
So hard.
It's like life. Life is like this.
I just want to say a few things and then jump in.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So one thing to keep in mind is that a Ling Yuan practice isn't a one-time event. You could be that person that clears a fundamental pattern in the first, in one practice. But keep in mind that what you're doing is you have this reference system that has been developed over time and reinforced. And you're going to start chipping away at that old reference system by adding new information. And you're doing that in your Ling Yuan practice. So life can get better, and then you can get hit with this pattern again, but it might not, so it might not seem like you've made any progress. So I'm going to tell the crabapple story. So Sabine and I were meeting and talking about, I don't even know what, on Zoom, because she lives in Calgary and I'm in Seattle. And she was talking about the crabapple outside her window, crabapple tree, and how she had been watching it, and it seemed like nothing was happening. And then all of a sudden, the next day, there was a crabapple. And of course, being a scientist, she could explain to me that while nothing was happening, there was all these internal processes going on. And it just so happened that all of them came together, and that one next day, the crabapple appeared. And I think that's a really good metaphor for Lingyuan practice, because you can be knee-deep in a pattern and feel like nothing is happening. And you can be bedeviled by the pattern, and you are not having joy rising up from your heart in a natural way around this pattern. But then something can shift as quickly as that crabapple. So just as best you can in any given moment in this process, just trust that something is happening. And if you think about that reference system and what you're dismantling, it makes sense that it's going to take some time. So be patient with yourself as best you can, and treat yourself like you would treat that 10-year-old, with compassion and gentleness and understanding. And when that gets too hard, you've got patterns that you can bring to your Lingyuan practice, and you can work on a Tongyuan quality. Because when you're doing Tongyuan practice, you are also changing the information of the reference system about what love is, or openness, or trust, or gongjing, or gratitude. And that's what this is about. It's about changing information, the information that drives your life. The other thing I would say also to emphasize is that preparation is the formal preparation in the practice. But preparation, again, we'll say it again, is observing yourself, getting to know the patterns, seeing how they show up in your life, because that forms the content of your practice. So that is important. That's an important preparation to do. Sabine, anything you want to add to that before we go into the experience?
No, we can go into the
You
experience.
want to do that? So what we thought might be nice is to just do, oops, I'm going the wrong way because this is upside down. Okay. No, I'm still going the wrong way. Well, I'm clearly unable to get us to the right slide. So what we're going to do is a modified Lingyuan practice, but it can still be quite deep. So Sabine is going to lead us verbally through the preparation and then the first two modules. So can you recognize the pattern and, help me out, I'm drawing a blank. And the manifestations, thank you. And then we'll do a closing. But before we open our eyes, I'm going to read another quote from Yuan Tse that really, I think, will be a very nice closing to our session. So, here we go.
Yeah, and I'll just add that going through the preparation, the first two questions, I think can help people who haven't practiced it yet to be more familiar and more relaxed with the practice tonight, so that you can have a nice practice tonight. So we'll go through the first two questions, and you can use that in your practice tonight. So you can choose to work with any fundamental pattern you want. You can use polarized thinking if you want, since I talked more about it today, or self-centeredness that you once talked about, and I think that will be the practice tonight. So if you use that one, it will help you get into the practice tonight. So practice of Lingyuan, preparation. I am the recording. Ling Yuan is the method for changing patterns through the communion and dialogue between Xin and Shen. Let's start with the preparation. Relax your body as much as you can. Look straight forward. And slowly draw the vision back. Gently close your eyes. You feel very relaxed, calm, and natural. Now use the 6 verses to adjust Shen. Use your heart to build and feel this nourishing chi field. Awareness inside the body. Feel the emptiness and spaciousness within. Expand this awareness out, becoming one with the universe. Draw the awareness back to the body, calm and peaceful. With utmost Gongjing, open to the universe. Let the bright universe nurture the heart with compassion and love. Feel relaxed, free, and joyful. Chi flowing harmoniously and smoothly. Feel the unification within. Feel the love and support of the chi field. Feel your connection with the universe. Feel the peacefulness and serenity. Now follow the Kaishin verse with utmost sincerity in your heart. Heaven, earth, and human are all teachers with infinite wisdom. I open my Shinmen to trust and love them unconditionally. With gratitude in my heart, I receive the love and wisdom and unify with them. My Shen, Yi, and Xin are fully aligned with the light of Tao. With Gongjing, realization and wisdom are arising. I am one with the light of the wisdom of the universe. Feel your heart. Feel the unification between your Shin and Shen. Your Shin and Shen are completely immersed in this wonderful communion and are ready for an open and sincere dialogue. Go deep inside yourself and feel the indescribable vitality, creativity, and desire to change yourself and grow. You are ready. With utmost trust, gently surrender your shin to your Shen, your true self. Your shin will begin to query your true self. Your true self, with its infinite wisdom, is going to exercise all the freedom it has to respond. Your shin is now completely open to your true self and to what your true self will reveal. Your shin is now asking your true self, can you recognize the pattern? Can you recognize the pattern? How does the pattern manifest in your life? How does the pattern manifest in your life? So I will read the ending now so that you are familiar with it. The ending of the practice. Pay attention to the changes in your Shin and Shen. Feel the wonderful information around you. Open your arms and slowly draw the information back to your heart. Place your hands on your heart. Store the information in your Shin and Shen, so the positive change will continue, making your life better and brighter. Once again, open your arms and draw chi back to lower dantian. Place your hands on lower dantian. Quietly nourish chi.
And here's just a little bit more information. The unhealthy patterns on a deep level of your consciousness will not somehow disappear automatically. When they are still there, they will have negative effects on life. We will constantly be looking for and finding things that are not healthy. This can seem to be an uninspiring process. However, as we move through this process, we can become truly inspired. We can't grow by pretending there are no unhealthy patterns in life. It may seem like we're inviting trouble. However, what comes from this process is very positive for life. It's going to take a lot of honesty and courage. If you think this sounds scary, change this attitude now. Facing yourself with honesty and courage is how you can have a truly open and free life. We cannot be liberated if we don't have the courage to even face ourselves. Embrace yourself. Embrace everything about yourself and your life. That's the true you. Accept everything about yourself.
Beautiful words from Yuan Tse. It's the hope. When you are ready, you can open your eyes. And thank you for being here.
Thank you.